Hockey is back, baby! That's right, the Vegas Golden Knights have returned from the NHL All-Star break, and we get to continue on the road trip that we didn't exactly do very great on before the All-Star break. The most important story coming out of this game, primarily going into it, I mean, there were two of them. One of them being it's the kickoff of the annual Dad's Trip, being that it's the first time the Golden Knights have had a Dad's Trip since 2019, is kind of sad, obviously because of the state of the world in the last couple of years. But on top of that being good, it was also the return of Zach Whitecloud and the first time that the Golden Knights have had their ideal opening night top six defenseman since the middle of November. So it's really hard to say that I am not just brimming with optimism, because I was brimming with optimism going into this game against the Nashville Predators, and absolutely nothing can kill my mood. Yeah, we got scored on first again. You couldn't just let me have this one thing, could you? Nope. No, I could not. But it shouldn't surprise you at this point. That's 8 straight road games, and 10 of the last 11 games overall we've allowed the first goal, so you should be pretty used to it at this point. I sure am. So yeah, no, that's not the start we were hoping for fresh out of the All-Star break. Golden Knights dominating the play in the first couple minutes. Really good scoring opportunity by this newly concocted third line consisting of Michael Amadio, Phil Kessel, and Chandler Stevenson. I don't even know where Bruce comes up with these ideas. They had a good opportunity. Eichel had a good opportunity. And then a minor defensive mistake, as is so often the case with this team right now, winds up on a 2-on-0, despite all 5 Golden Knights defenders being in the defensive zone. Your guess is as good as mine, and ultimately Adin Hill's a good goalie, but Matt Duchene is not going to miss when he's got basically a wide open net, and that puts the Preds up 1-0 5 minutes into the game. But wait a second, don't. All hope isn't lost yet, because this is the new post-All-Star break Golden Knights, and they're not going to let games get away from them, and that's exactly what happened here. Is they put their head down, and they did their best to level up the game as quickly as possible, and it didn't take long, as Michael Amadio knotted the game up at 1 just like 2 minutes later. This was an interesting play, as, you know, we just saw UC Saros in, you know, the Tendy tandem at the All-Star game being the one to shoot the pucks down the ice, and what was weird is he chose not to play this relatively soft rim around the boards in, and ultimately William Karlsson was able to get down behind the back-checking Nashville Predators, cut off the puck along the wall, feed the puck into the middle to Riley Smith, who's got his back to the goal at this point, and everybody's thinking he's going to backhand it, but no, he makes a short 3-foot pass, dishing it to Amadio, who's on his forehand sweeping across the front of the net, and he shoots it against the grain, above the glove of UC Saros and into the net, to tie it up at 1. It's Amadio's 8th of the year from Smith and Karlsson, 6:27 in. So it didn't take long for the Golden Knights to respond. And it didn't take the Golden Knights any longer than it did to respond and tie it up than it did to take the lead in the form of a Will Carrier breakaway goal. Now, Will Carrier has had so many great opportunities, especially going into the All-Star break. He had that overtime penalty shot in the last game before the break against the Islanders. And then obviously he gets this breakaway early that he's able to capitalize on. And this was just a really weird play, because it looked like it was a major defensive breakdown for the Predators. It was a 1 draw by the Golden Knights, which in the defensive zone, which was then lost, and the puck was kicked back to the point where Saros was, or where Josi was supposed to get it. You know, Roman Josi is a Norris Trophy caliber defenseman, and he just muffs it. He misses it, and then Carrier is skating right at him, and you know, Will Carrier is a pretty scary guy when he gets going. He's big, he's fast, he's got a lot of strength, and he just kind of muscles Roman Josi out of the way and is in all alone from the red line in. And although he's a bottom 6 forward for the Golden Knights, I think he's probably one of the most underrated bottom 6 players in the NHL, as he's got just a really good finish, and he doesn't make a mistake from about the hash marks, just wires it underneath the glove of Saros and puts the Golden Knights ahead 2-1. That's Carrier's 13th goal of the year. This is just uncharted waters for Will Carrier, which is just mind-boggling, because, I mean, I'm a huge fan of his. He's a great player, and I like the brand of hockey he's playing, and it's awesome to finally see him get rewarded for the effort he's put in. And so he scored that at 6:54 of the first period. That puts the Golden Knights getting 2 goals in 27 seconds as a response to Nashville's first goal. And by no sense of the imagination is that the Golden Knights' last opportunity in the first period. Just a few seconds later, there was a good chance on a bad line change by Nashville. The Golden Knights went in 3-on-1 And ultimately, it was just one pass too many, and ultimately the play wound up going out the zone. I think it was like the misfits. I think it was Carlson and Marchessault with Pietrangelo going in. And ultimately, it wasn't a great opportunity, but it showed that the pressure was there about halfway through. And then a little bit later on, just about 2 minutes after that, a little bit of a snafu in the offensive zone, Phil Kessel puts the Golden Knights up 3-1. However, this is definitely Will Carrier's goal, and I'm about to tell you why. This is just a testament to how good a transition team the Golden Knights is, and I know it's the first game back after the All-Star break, and the opposition's probably going to be a little funky at times, and nothing's going to look particularly perfect, but this play epitomizes the Golden Knights offense in a nutshell. Chandler Stevenson cuts off a pass about the half boards of his defensive zone, sees Will Carrier shooting up the middle of the ice, basically lobs a stretch pass up there, and what Will Carrier did in the neutral zone is just proof that this is probably one of the best games of his Golden Knights career. He sees that the pass is going to be contested. I believe it was Yossi again. And instead of going to try and play the puck in a contested area, he just hooks his stick and pulls back on the blade of Yossi's stick, pulling him out of the way and fielding the pass a little bit further up the ice, walking down. And this one isn't as good of a shooting area for Carrier, so he tries to drag it across and feed through the 5-hole. And he does, but it also pulls Saros just out of the way enough to where the puck doesn't go in the net. And so it's a scramble at this point. Carrier finds it behind Saros, but he's behind the goal line at this point, so he essentially tries to wrap it around, ultimately winds up flicking it through the blue paint, and this is proof that Phil Kessel's been in the league for a very long time. He crashes the net. He does what every junior hockey coach has said, I think, ever, which is go to the net, you'll find something. And that's exactly where Phil Kessel found his 10th goal of the year. Wow. Yeah, and so Carrier gets the primary assist on this one at 11:58, and this ties Will Carrier's career high in points. It's game 52. I'm going to say that again. He's about to pass his career high in points for an 82-game season with 30 games left. He's having himself a year, and this is exactly what the Golden Knights needed coming out of their depth players. So again, the Golden Knights continue to push forward after another offensive foray. They finally got that 2-goal lead, which they haven't had since the Washington game. Like a month ago, it feels like at this point. And ultimately, they just keep building off of it. There's a really good chance for Eichel and Marchessault shortly after the Kessel goal that was thwarted by one too many passes. I think you're starting to see a theme here. And then a 2-on-1 by Carlson and Smith with about 7 minutes to go was required a really good save from Saros moving from his right to his left and just getting it with the glove. And that was a really good moment. And then the Golden Knights kind of got a little sloppy, which happens when you've got a multi-goal lead, especially early on in the game, but you can't let that happen. But they were bailed out by Aiden Hill. A guy got lost in the low slot, and ultimately Hill took him a really good save to get the threat out of the way, which he was able to do. He was really not very busy in the first period, as that good opportunity came with about 5 minutes to go, and then the Golden Knights went down a man just shortly after that great save with McNabb's tripping penalty at 15:45. Nashville's not the greatest power play, especially this year. They were really dangerous last year, but now they're 27th in the NHL going into this game, 3 for their last 30. But they were 1 for 2 against the New Jersey Devils in their last game before the break. And it did not look like it. It looked like, the former 3 for 30 as opposed to the latter 1 for 2. Because they were just a hot mess in the offensive zone, not really able to muster anything. Either the Nashville Predators aren't very good on the power play, or having your ideal 6 defenseman makes killing penalties a lot easier. I don't know. I'm just a guy who talks into a camera for fun. But ultimately, that's where the first period ends with the Golden Knights up 3-1. Now, there's a lot of positive things to take away from this, but the one glaring stat that just jumped off the page for me was the fact that the Golden Knights in their previous 7 first periods had a combined total of 3 goals. In this first period alone, 3 goals. The Golden Knights outshot the Predators 12-4. The third line was really a difference maker in that period. They were buzzing from the very beginning, even before the Golden Knights got on the board, even when it was 0-0. There was a lot of really good positional plays, a lot of good offensive pressure. And the Golden Knights, 4 shots allowed, ties for the lowest allowed in a single period this year. And the Golden Knights came out in the second period, foot on the gas, just like they left the first period. Really good chance by Riley Smith really early on in the period, about 2 minutes in, was broken up by what one could argue is a very blatantly obvious missed hooking call, but I digress because, water finds level, it's hockey, there's always something coming back on the other end, and what came back on the other end was a goal by Chandler Stevenson. Now, this was another one of those really good third line plays because Stevenson's down on this third line now with the Stone injury, and clearly this has got to be one of the best line combinations for this opponent that I've ever seen because this line just dominated the entire game. There was a lot of contact out front. Will Carrier kind of got pushed into UC Saros by one of the defenders, but ultimately Stevenson was able to shoot it, catch his own rebound while Saros is getting tackled, and ultimately stick with the play, work his way around the defenders, and tuck it in behind the laying down UC Saros from the goaltender's left, and ultimately put the Golden Knights up 4-1. Now, what was interesting is I was really expecting there to be a challenge on Stevenson's 12th of the year, but there wasn't. Saros was banging his stick and yelling back at the bench and yelling for the coach to try and get his attention, but there wasn't going to be a challenge. I think it was because it was pretty clear that Carrier did everything in his power to avoid contact and ultimately was just pushed in there to begin with. But what matters is that from that point on, the game was kind of over. Sure, the Golden Knights have a 3-goal lead. It's on the road, so you never know what you're going to get. But it feels like Saros lost his connection with his bench. The team kind of lost the energy, and that was kind of the game. And it was kind of indicative by what transpired over the rest of this second period. As sure, the Preds came back a little bit. There was a really good save by Hill, combining with the puck going off the post after a bit of a missed offensive zone keep in by Alex Pietrangelo with about 8 minutes. That did wind up leading to a 2-on-1, and then the Golden Knights went to their first power play of the game in the form of a Jeremy Lauzon interference penalty at 13:03. Pretty early on in this power play, it was 5-on-3.5 as one of the Predators' sticks broke immediately off the faceoff draw. It was the power play was okay. It wasn't spectacular. Obviously, we didn't score. The first 50 seconds of it were a hot mess, and then the last 70 seconds were a lot better. Eichel wound up hitting the scary side of the post pretty close to the end of his shift, and ultimately the second wave of the power play didn't come on until about 15 seconds left, and by that point, there's not really any offense to be had. And then towards the end of the period with about 4 minutes to go, there was another 4-on-2 that was a nifty passing play, required a good save from Saros. And then the Golden Knights got to go to their second power play in the form of a Cody Glass holding penalty. Again, the power play was just a hot mess, which is to be expected. These guys haven't played together in a while, and we're still trying to figure out what the power play lines are. But the point is the Golden Knights probably should be better. But what these power plays are doing while they're not scoring is they're not exactly hurting the momentum of the team as a whole. And so we're still able to maintain positive control over the period and over the game as a whole. And we get to the end of the second period, score is still 4-1, and the stat line for what the Nashville Predators were able to do in that period is honestly one of the most lackluster things I have ever seen. Nashville Predators, who had one of the top 10 offenses in the NHL last year, had a grand total of 2 shots. 2. In the entire period. Yeah. 2. Just 2. Yeah. So after setting a team record for the fewest number of shots allowed in a period, and there's the idea that the Golden Knights could set the NHL record for this season for fewest amount of shots allowed in a game, it was pretty obvious that either 1, the game was over, or 2, the Predators were going to come out with a little bit more fire in this third period to at least give their fans something to cheer about. And let's be honest, the things that the Nashville Predators fans were cheering about was kind of depressing. We'll come to that in a second. The third period opened really quiet, not a lot of action in both directions, which is to be expected. It's a 3-goal game. And then there were 2 offsetting penalties that led to a 4-on-4 play kind of early, about 8.5 minutes in the form of Alec Martinez and Nino Niederreiter kind of getting into a jawing match / taking each other's helmets off. That's a no-no. You can't do that. 2 offsetting unsportsmanlike conduct penalties puts the team down, or puts both teams down a man. 4-on-4 hockey is awesome. I think they should play this all the time, but that's kind of beside the point. Partial breakaway for Eichel. pretty early on in the 4-on-4, thwarted by a really decent save by Saros. And then the unthinkable happens. The Nashville Predators got a shot. Yay! And that's exactly what happened as Bronx cheers came up through Bridgestone Arena. That's a real sad sight when your team musters its 7th total shot of the game, 50 minutes into the game, and it required 4-on-4 to do so. That's just sad. And then, shortly after the 4-on-4 ended, because the Predators still didn't land a shot between the end of the 4-on-4 and a pretty good ways into the third. There was a really good save by a good rebound chance. Like, Marshall wired the puck into the zone. Saros kicked it out and then robbed Eichel. Guy is so snake bit right now, but he's there. He's knocking on the door. He had a couple of great opportunities this game. And it wouldn't surprise me if he goes ballistic against the Minnesota Wild next game. But it's just, the Golden Knights put the vice grip on this game. And sure, it got a little shaky in the end in the form of a Carrier cross-checking penalty with about 3 minutes to go in the game. And obviously the penalties were going to even out. It was 2-1 at that point. So 2-2 in a game that is 4-1 is kind of harmless. One of the things that was really interesting, it was a 6-on-4, as right from the start of the power play, the Predators pulled UC Saros, put him on the bench, got the extra attacker, yada, yada, yada. This was really where the Predators took themselves out of the conversation of the least amount of shots in a game this year. They think they mustered like 8 shots in the last 5 minutes of the game or something. So Hill was pretty busy for the game that was really quiet overall. Hill made a couple really good scramble saves, saw the same amount of shots in the third period as he did in the first and second combined. That was with about 2 minutes to go when those numbers evened up. And then Waugh had 2 chances at the empty net for a shorthanded empty net goal, both of which were a little bit off the mark, which is fine because, the Golden Knights are up by a bunch. And then finally, even though we weren't concerned about the outcome, Alex Pietrangelo seals it up with an empty netter that took a weird bounce off the half wall and just basically curled down to the Nashville net and in. The one interesting thing about this goal, because it's a pretty, monotonous empty net goal in the middle of the NHL season, Aiden Hill got a point. And for a second there, I thought he scored, which would have been insane, but ultimately Pietrangelo is the one that wired around. Hill gets his first point of the year, and Pietrangelo's 6th goal of the year at 19 minutes. And with that, the game is over. Golden Knights come back from the break with a dominant 5-1 victory. And so there are a couple of important storylines that happened throughout this game. Obviously, Will Carrier gets another game-winning goal. Crazy. He had 2 combined going in this year, and I think this is his 4th or 5th of the year. Stevenson recorded his 200th point in the NHL. Hill got his 11th win and sets a new personal record for wins in a single season. And most importantly, this is the first game that the Golden Knights looked like they've dominated in a couple of weeks. And if we're really going to talk big picture things here, I think it could be a good way to get them set off on the right path going into the playoff push, heading into the trade deadline. The team still hasn't lost in regulation on the dad's trip, and there's one more game of that with when we take on the Minnesota Wild. But really the most important thing, the biggest shot in the arm this is for the Golden Knights, is they're back in first place, which didn't take long. They were in third by 1 point and only out of second due to a tiebreaker. But with the Seattle Kraken getting their butts handed to them on Long Island by the Islanders, the Golden Knights move back into first place by 1 point. So there's not really a lot to complain about, and there's a lot of positive to take away from this. Obviously, I hope they're able to play like this again against the Minnesota Wild, which would be ideal. We need to put some points in the bank. The Golden Knights do have the hardest strength of schedule over the last 31 games, if we include the game against the Predators, in the entire Western Conference. So it's by no stretch of the imagination going to be a cakewalk getting into the playoffs. But if we can continue to replicate games like this, I have a feeling we're going to be, as a fan base and as a team, hopefully there'll be some celebrations by the time the end of March rolls around. I would really love to not be on pins and needles this time around. So please, I beg of you, I need to sleep. I need to sleep at night. But with that thought, I think that's about all there is to cover on this one. Really good win. Really excited for what the last 30 games of the regular season entail, and hopefully what a couple playoff games look like. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, comment down below, tell all your friends about it. If you really enjoyed this, subscribe for videos like this all the time. We've got the deadline coming up. We've got 30 more games and hopefully 16 playoff wins and a Stanley Cup in the near future. So with that, thanks for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one.